All right, is it working? Yeah, okay, awesome. Well, thank you guys. I'm Marcos. I'm the head of product at Stable Labs. Today, I'm going to be talking about governance maturities in DAOs. We will explore how we can quantify this and what we learn in this process, and hopefully enable both DAOs and the wider Web3 ecosystem to actually make more informed and insightful decisions and improve their decision-making processes. So yeah, let's start by just facing it. DAOs are really complex. At first glance, it's kind of they are similar to a puzzle, in my opinion. You know, one of those have over 1,000 pieces, and they're really difficult to actually put together. And I think this complexity actually comes from their unique form. So DAOs are, in its essence, they are like a mixture of different elements. You have contributors, you have stakeholders, you have community members. And each one of these elements, they have different needs, they have different objectives, and they even have different perspectives. And what happens is that all of these elements, they need to collaborate and coordinate with each other. And this forms a governance system that doesn't work, that works without the traditional hierarchies or the traditional structures that you might see elsewhere, right? So this makes the DAO governance process something that is not linear. It lacks those clear-cut decision-making processes and paths that we see in conventional organizations, where you have a single leader or a group of executives that make the final calls or make the decisions, right? Instead, DAOs, they require a minimum shared consensus, and this usually is leaning a lot on intuition and personal experience. This lack of reliance on quantitative data and empirical evidence leads to an approach to decision-making that is really something subjective and not objective at all. And to make this even more complicated, we don't have a playbook, or we don't have a guide on how to actually take DAOs from something that is not decentralized to something that is really decentralized. So it's not a highway, it's not a direct path, it's more like a maze. So you have a lot of twists, you have a lot of turns, and also a bunch of dead ends. So we at Stable Labs, we've just felt that we needed a tool that could help us understand this complexity, to be able to elicit insights from DAOs and be able to start understanding how that process towards decentralization works, and perhaps, hopefully, help them in that process. So that's basically what we try to build here. And so this is we design or we build DAO Meter. And DAO Meter, in its essence, it's a framework for analyzing and measuring what is the maturity of a DAO. So we try to provide comprehensive insights into the organizational structure of different DAOs and their governance process. We examine it and we evaluate several of these dimensions and key aspects that makes what a DAO is and how they govern and they operate. And we believe that this type of analysis is actually a great first step into getting this really valuable view into what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of DAOs, and how we can actually help them get to a better decentralization or reach that ideal of decentralization. So we understand DAO maturity as a connector. It actually works as a bridge that links the current state of a DAO with what is the DAO's highest potential. This concept of maturity, it's far from being something that has a single dimension in a position. It encapsulates multiple aspects that go just beyond just come on. There you go. Okay, having some technical issues there. There you go. Well, we'll see if that works. That go beyond just decentralization. It's about what are the processes and the procedures that DAO put up in place in order to operate. It's about how they manage their resources, but it's also about how DAO members are able to effectively contribute to the ultimate goal of the DAO, and how that relationship between contributors and DAO is established. So we try to build DAO meter upon these two ideas. And we use a combination of an approach that has like both quantitative and qualitative research methodologies to ensure that we were like having a complete analysis. And this actually allows us to maintain a balance between numerical data that we got from on-chain and off-chain sources, but also insights from the context of each specific DAOs and all the DAOs that we talk with during this whole process. There you go. So we identified 6 big areas or 6 big categories that help us define what DAO maturity is. The first one here is proposals, and basically it covers if the DAO has a process for that preliminary discussion about the proposal, and whether this proposal data is stored on-chain or not, and what is the actual process to discuss a proposal, right? Then we have community. So community is basically how the DAO organizes the community. Basically, does the DAO has community stewards? How frequently the DAO reports to the community, and how contributors, like, do they have like a compensation system for contributors? How do you, like, how the DAO actually rewards contributors or community members? We also analyze the voting process. So this is more like, how the voting actually happens. What are the elements that make a voting effective? How the voting powers is distributed? Are they using a custom voting tool, or they are using like a standard tooling that it's available out there? Next, we have documentation. And this is basically centered around transparency and access to information. It's about what are the documents that the DAO is producing to communicate with the community. What is the documentation that is available about the protocol, about the DAO, about how the DAO operates, about the tokenomics, that everybody can access freely to actually understand how these procedures and processes actually happen in the DAO. Then we have security, and this is basically analyzing whether the DAO or the protocol in itself, they have a security model that is centralized or decentralized. Do they have regular audits? Did they ever face a major loss of funds? And like is there a guy that has the admin keys that could actually be a threat to the DAO and the protocol? And finally, we evaluate also the treasury, like how the protocol manage its treasury. So each one of these categories has a lot of many subcategories. This is how the expanded list actually looks like. So if we were to evaluate, let's say DAO XYZ, we will take a look at each one of these items, and then we will assign them a point based on how well they did in each one of these subcategories. And of course, not all these categories have the same relevance. We implement a weighted system to make the most important categories actually matter more and have a highest impact in the final score. Then we basically, with all of this, we aggregate all the data and we produce a score. And why this matter? Why are we doing this, basically? Well, there you go. Like I mentioned at the beginning, DAOs are complex. So I think that it's very important for us as a community to start developing those tools and frameworks that enable us to actually deal with this complexity and inform our decision-making processes, not only at the DAO level, but also as an investor or as somebody that, like an interest party that wants to start contributing to a DAO. It's important to have this information available in a way that is digestible. On a second note, we also think that it's important to have a way of comparing two DAOs. And this is not only helpful for investors or people trying to join a DAO, it's also helpful for DAOs themselves. As having a score, it's setting the foundations for their future decisions. It enables a DAO to actually understand where they are standing right now and how they can actually progress in the future towards their objective of decentralization. So far, we have evaluated over 35 DAOs. It took a little bit of time. And you can see, you can find all of these reports available in our websites. They are free. You can just go in there and you can access the report and you can see how well they did in the different categories that I mentioned before. But also this process of going through over 35 DAOs and receiving their feedback, we got a lot of feedback and we learned a lot out of the process. Not only about what makes a DAO tick, but also what are the limitations that we identified with our current framework. So in the first place, there is an intrinsic diversity to DAOs. And this made us realize that there isn't like a one-size-fits-all approach. Not all the DAOs are going through the same things, and they are not operating in the same context. But we don't see this as, well, it is a limitation, but we see it as an opportunity to further develop these frameworks, so we are able to learn more about DAOs and how to understand them. Going further, we got a confirmation that whether like maturity and decentralization are really closely related, they work in tandem. These concepts are not the same. A DAO can be highly decentralized, but be very mature, and the opposite is also true. You can have a very mature DAO, but with high centralization. And this actually brings us to the last learning. It's like, we understand maturity as a continuum, it's a bridge from the present to the future. However, this definition of maturity is actually evolving with time. What we thought was a mature DAO 2 years ago, now is probably somewhere in the middle, and in the future, we don't know what a mature DAO would look like. So this means that we need to be continually improving and iterating over this framework in order to be able to provide the most value. So yeah. That's pretty much it. We can say that the DAOs are still really babies. Like they are in its infancies, and we still need those tools to help us get through the complexity and be able to start making more informed decisions and help them get to a more decentralized space. We've seen that even though we've seen with the current bear market that a lot of DAOs, they actually realize that they need to become better at decision-making processes. They need to be better at managing their resources in order, if they want to survive the bear market, right? However, this actually is a really exciting time because it means that we have now the opportunity to develop tools and to develop frameworks that actually can help them reach the new bull market. So to me, it's only up from here. So yeah, well, thank you so much. That's pretty much it. Yeah, here you have my socials. If you want to know more about Stable Labs, what we do, or about DAO Meter, feel free to scan that QR code. We are also looking for delegates, so if anybody is interested, feel free to reach out. And yeah, I don't know if anybody has a question. Yes?
In terms of the framework,
yes.
For example, MicroDAO, it's the best DAO right now in the DAO Meter ecosystem.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they change for completely with the
Yeah, that's actually it's a great question. So I think that the process itself, we kind of started by trying to, we use this framework from Nicholson to actually define the taxonomy of an informational system, right? And we iterated over this taxonomy several times. We did a bunch of surveys, we approached a bunch of DAOs, and we actually took as guinea pig the DAOs that we were already collaborating with. Stable Labs offers professional delegate service, so we have a great relationship with a bunch of DAOs, and like top tier DAOs, I would say. So that actually put us in a really good position to reach out to them and start having access to this type of information. And we kind of selected the DAOs that were mostly aligned what we think are the most relevant DAOs. There are probably DeFi DAOs or NFTs and gaming DAOs, L2 DAOs, and L1 DAOs. So that's like the first part. The second part, how we can update this and how we can keep it fresh. Well, that's something that we're still trying to figure it out. As we know, it's really time-consuming because you need to go through a lot of information. But it's also a back and forth. There is a benefit to the DAOs to actually get the score. Not only because they give them like I mentioned before, like a foundation to understand where they are, where they are right now, and how to improve moving forward. But also, it's like we get in this loop, in this relationship. Like, hey, we changed this. Is this like something that we could do to update our score and make it better? And we are also like iterating over our own framework. Initially, we have like how many? We're like over 50 categories, dude. Like, and we start like strapping, like removing categories and dimensions because they were not sustainable in the future. So yeah, that's pretty much it. All right. I think that we run out of time. Yeah. Okay, we good? All right. Well, thank you so much, guys.